Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Prajanarandana Yashodanandana Prajanarandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Shri Paramahamsa Bhagavadgitacharya Ashtotara Shushima His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Jai ISKCON BPT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Jai Jai Vishnu Paramahamsa Bhagavadgitacharya Ashtotara Shushima Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Jai Ananda Koti Vaishnavindra Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Brahma. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 On this 20th day of June 2018 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in chapter 15 of the Bhagavad Gita as it is, entitled The Yoga of the Supreme Person. Text number 8, page 601. There's one book that has a different page in each one.
We're on 7.
No, we did 7. Mama wants to Jivala.
Okay.
601. Text 8. Shadiran yadavatnoti
Sariyam Yadavatmoti.
yachapyutkramati shvaraha
Yakchayuddhamishthataya.
vihibhaitani samyati vayurgandhan vasayat shadiram yadavatnoti yachapyutkramati shvaraha vihibhaitani samyati vayurgandhan vasayat. Alright, we're going to wait a little bit till Damodar gets on the page. We need his voice. There are only a few. 601. Text 8, chapter 15. Got it?
Yes.
Shadiram yadavapnoti yachapyutkramati shvaraha vihidvaitani samyati vayurgandhani vasayat. Shadiram yadavapnoti yachapyutkramatishvaraha vihivaitani samyati vayugandhani vashayat.
Shadiram yadavapnoti
Shadiram yadavapnoti yachapyutkramatishvaraha
Vihitvaitani samyati
Vihitvaitani samyati Vayugandhani vashayat.
Saryam yadavipoti
Shadiram yadavapnoti Yachapyutkramatishvaraha
Graditani samyati
Vihitvaitani samyati Vayugandhani vashayat. Word by word meaning, Shadiram, the body, yet as avapnoti, gets, yet as cha-api, also. What kramati gives up, Ishvaraha, the Lord of the body, Vihitva, taking, etani, all these, samyati, goes away, vayuhu, the air, gandhan, smells, iva, like, ashayat, from their source. Translation. The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another, as the air carries aromas. Thus he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. Purport. Here the living entity is described as Ishvara, the controller of his own body. If he likes, he can change his body to a higher grade, and if he likes, he can move to a lower class. Minute independence is there. The change his body undergoes depends upon him. At the time of death, the consciousness he has created will carry him on to the next type of body. If he has made his consciousness like that of a cat or dog, he is sure to change to a cat's or dog's body. And if he has fixed his consciousness on godly qualities, he will change into the form of a demigod. And if he is in Krishna consciousness, he will be transferred to Krishna Loka in the spiritual world and will associate with Krishna. It is a false claim that after the annihilation of this body, everything is finished. The individual soul is transmigrating from one body to another, and his present body and present activities are the background of his next body. One gets a different body according to karma, and he has to quit this body in due course. It is stated here that the subtle body, which carries the conception of the next body, develops another body in the next life. This process of transmigrating from one body to another and struggling while in the body is called karshati, or struggle for existence. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance to him and all members of Shri Parampara. So, for me anyway, this verse, the previous verse, this verse, and the next verse, and text 10, so these four verses, they provide the most, relatable description of transmigration in the Bhagavad Gita. So let's review here in the context. So the previous verse, Krishna has declared, Mamai Vangshu Jiva Loka Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, that every jiva, the soul, every individual soul in this world, is part and part, what probably we call part and parcel of Krishna. The word angsha means a little particle, just like you have a drop of water from the ocean. So it has the same chemical composition of that ocean in minute degree. Or you have a little fleck of gold from a gold mine. It's still gold, but the quantity is vastly different, but it's the same quality. So similarly, we have God's qualities in minute degree. We're divine by nature. But we've lost that divine nature by artificially breaking the connection with Krishna, by the process of forgetfulness. And that forgetfulness is artificial. By nature, we're God conscious. We're our intrinsic nature, according to Krishna, in his form as Lord Chaitanya, is that it says Jivera, this is that word Jiva again, Jivera Swarupoi Krishnera Nityadas, a very important little line here from another book called the Chaitanya Charitamrita. You can sit there if you want. And so what it means is, the question was asked by one of Lord Chaitanya's great disciples called Sanatana Goswami, very important figure in our line. He wrote very important books and was a pillar of devotional service in the early days of writing for Lord Chaitanya, during Lord Chaitanya's time. And so he approached Lord Chaitanya as his spiritual master, and he asked him a classic question that we should also want to ask. Who am I, really? Who am I, and why am I suffering in this world? And how can I get out of it? What it means? I don't know anything. I don't know who I am, where I came from, where I'm going. And when we recognize that, then that's the first step in enlightenment, in recognizing that we really don't know the answer to these basic, all-encompassing questions. So Lord Chaitanya answers the question very distinctly. He says, Jivera Swarupoi Krishnera Nityadas, which means that the Swarup, or the natural form and function of every jiva, Lord Krishna uses that word in text 7, Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta. The Jiva Bhuta means a living entity. The natural Swarup means his real form, unalienated. In other words, that which doesn't change, it's really you. That's your Swarup. Is to be an eternal servant of Krishna. Krishnera Nityadas. Nityadas means eternal servant. Krishnera means of Krishna. Then he goes on, in the second half of the verse, which is not as well known, is also very important. Krishnera tatastha shakti beda bed prakash. So what that means is, of Krishna, we are the tatastha shakti. The tata is the borderline. Just like we're, perfect example, we're right near the beach here. Everyone's been down to the beach, and you see the water comes in and goes out, right? So there's a big part of the beach that's assuming there's no high tide or low tide, just in any specific moment, is just dry beach. And then you have the ocean. But then you have the part that the ocean covers and uncovers, covers and uncovers. So that's the tata, that's the borderline between the ocean and the beach. So we're on that borderline. With the tastha, we're situated in the border between the material and the spiritual energy. Now, our intrinsic nature, our natural position is within the spiritual energy. But because we're what we call conditioned souls, we have turned away, bahirmukha means turned away from God, and we're focusing on God's external energy. And we forgot all about God. And we've been, we come down to this world and we get a certain, as Krishna will describe in a verse or two, a certain set of eyes, ears, senses, and we identify completely with that body. We have a certain race, we have a certain gender, we have a certain age as we go through each body, and we are identifying with it as we go. But it's just, in our history of life in this material world, it's just one of uncounted bodies, and not all human bodies. Some higher bodies and many lower bodies from the human form. But in the planet Earth, the highest evolution is the human form. And it's a very valuable form, because only in this form do we have the brain power to understand these things and to direct our senses and our mind in such a way that we return to our original Swarup. And that's what this Bhagavad Gita and the whole science of Bhakti Yoga is all about. It's just purification and reformation of the soul's consciousness, so that we return to our natural state as eternal blissful service of Krishna in a certain rasa or relationship of love. We are meant to return to that land of love, where everything loves Krishna, Krishna loves everyone, and it's just unending bliss. That's really what we're looking for, and that's the reality. So in this world, however, these anshas of Krishna, these little particles of Krishna, which are us, and we are eternal, we are prakriti sthani, we're situated within the external energy, which we're very familiar with, all this solid matter and gases and liquids and radiant energy that forms the world as we know it. And that we have a little vortex of it, which is our body. We're taking in air and other things and excreting, and it's not actually steady at any moment, it's changing at every moment. But pretty much this has the same form as we go through our life. you know. But it's a temporary vehicle. So we're stuck in that. At Karshati, we're being pulled and we're being struggling hard with the mind and the five senses. That's why he says six senses. The mind is sometimes said to be the six senses. So this is our situation. And then the present verse, he says, in that situation, the body eventually dies, and Shariram, that's the body, we get another one. So the Ishvara, now we're kind of the lords of this particular body, so we'll call the Ishvara in this context. What Kramati means we give up. We give up a certain body, and we take another one. Grihitva etani, and we do it repeatedly, so it's plural. Grihitva etani, all these bodies we're giving up and taking, giving up and taking. And how does that work? The soul is, the analogy is very nice. It's like, the soul is like air, and we're taking fragrances. And the fragrances are our thoughts, are our consciousness that we build up during lifetime. Now, in the human form, we have a chance to determine what we're going to be conscious of. That's the whole freedom we have. Is that we can go here, we can go there, we can read this, we can read that. We're making choices every day. Now, it's true that the choices we make today are probably going to be pretty close to the ones we made yesterday, because you get into habits. That's called conditioning. If we grow up in a family and listen to a certain kind of music, chances are that when you leave the house and you get your own place, you listen to the same kind of music. You know, it's not a given. You can rebel against that and go hang out with your friends and listen to another kind of music. But it's always changing. It's depending on your desire in any given moment. So that those thoughts, those decisions, those associations, what you eat, what you listen to, who you hang out with, what you do, that all builds up a certain state of consciousness called a bhava. And Krishna says, "Young bhavi smaran bhava." Whatever is the most prominent thought or state of consciousness at the time of death, that will determine your next life. It's a law of nature. And we've been doing that since time immemorial. Now, Krishna will say in a few verses, I provide forgetfulness. I'm in the heart of everyone. We all have a manifestation of Krishna in our heart called the super soul of Paramatma. And from him is coming the knowledge and the forgetfulness. What does he say? Motak smritir jnanam apohanancha. Knowledge, remembrance, and also forgetfulness. So that forgetfulness is also a blessing. Ask anyone with PTSD how he or she really wants to forget that trauma which is oppressing them, whatever it may be. You know. So our entire previous life and lives we've forgotten. Unless anyone here can remember as a jati smara can remember a previous birth. I don't think so. But occasionally, even empirically, we find there are little children that grow up. Somehow it's more common in India, but it's true in other places. And they'll say to the parents' great shock, you know, something like, "You're not actually my father, you know, and mother. I belong in this village, you know. Name the village. I can remember, you know, the such and such about it." And I guess probably most of the time they just ignore it and it goes away. The kid gets absorbed in regular life and forgets that. But this fellow is dead now. He was a professor of psychology in some southern university, I forget now, Virginia, I think. And his name was Ian Stevenson. He actually did studies of this. He heard about it. He traveled to India. He got a grant, you know, and he started interviewing and he went to the village that was 60 miles away, which might have been 1,000 miles with these simple Indian villagers. They couldn't travel. And he actually went there and checked it out, and sure enough, in a significant number of the cases, it was accurate. And so he titled this paper. He wrote it up on a paper, peer review. 15 cases of that seem to indicate transmigration of the soul. It was actually a scientific paper. And these things have, since that time, there've been other things, near-death experiences, where which is also indicative proof that you can live beyond the body. The body is flatlining, and the doctors are rushing in and providing the paddles, you know, and you're observing it from the place near the ceiling. They often say, I haven't got to it. One lady in New Dwarka did, the devotee. Yes, her name was Dwarka Rani. She works in the BBT. Anyway, So Krishna is giving us the lowdown of what's actually happening here, and he compares it to this a soul to the breeze that's taking the fragrance. So it can be a very stinky fragrance depending on what we cultivate, or it can be very divine and uplifting. You can make your better destiny, material destiny as well. But we don't want that. As Krishna's already explained back in the 9th chapter, is that even if you a very pious soul, and you perform different sacrifices, and you chant certain mantras and worship the gods, and you go to heaven, material heaven, Indraloka, you can enjoy for a long time much greater delights than you can possibly imagine here. You know, with a strong young body and everything like that. For many, many thousands of years. But then the time is up at a certain point. It's just like you accumulate piety. It's like piety credits, you know. So the piety credits are there, and then you spend them when you're in heaven. You're not thinking of Krishna, you know. You're thinking of enjoying. But then, but at a certain point, the pious credits are gone, and you have to come back down again to the world of death. Krishna says, Martyaloka. So that doesn't improve your progress toward the goal of life, which is breaking free of birth and death, and going back home, back to Godhead, to the land where you don't come back. Remember at the beginning of this chapter? That this is one of the descriptions Krishna says, you should search out that place after you cultivate yoga, bhakti yoga, and with you sharpen that sword of detachment, because if it's our attachments to all of these things and our aspirations to enjoy in this world that keeps bringing us back, birth after birth, to suffer birth, old age, disease, and death, no matter how rich you are or handsome you are, whatever. So you have to develop the sword of detachment. And practically speaking, as anyone who practices a little Krishna consciousness can tell you, it's only possible to cultivate that sort of detachment by cultivating attachment to Krishna. This is the great strength of the bhakti yogis. The non-bhakti yogis, the impersonalist yogis, how are they going to cultivate detachment? Not by living in 4 blocks away from a Southern California beach, that's for sure. And go up to the Himalayas, you know, and the cold, you know. When it's cold, okay, now let's really get detached. Let's go down and bathe and break the ice and get into the river. You know, in other words, it's cold, let's get colder, you know. And if it's hot, all right, we'll go down to the desert and we'll build some fires around and sit under the sun, and it'll make us detached. This is not practical for any of us. I don't want to do it, you know. But that's a fallacy. Factually speaking, you can't, whatever detachment you develop is very weak. And there are instances in the Shastra. These great yogis, they live underwater. Sabri Muni, remember? He's living underwater for years in the very sacred water in the Yamuna, of all places. But he wasn't really a bhakta. And so he's living, and then after some time he sees a couple of fish under there copulating, and it was too much. Couldn't control his mind and come out of the water and get married. Come on. And here we got the brahmacharis walking, doing their job down by the beach. Yeah, you know, you watch the waves and the curves. There's also the curves, and Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. You know, especially if you have a kirtan. So why is that? This is a very important point, because Krishna is giving us the description here of transmigration. So if one can develop his Krishna consciousness in this lifetime, so that he's fully attracted to Krishna and wants to use the senses not for sense gratification, but for service to Krishna. Just like we have the eyes. Well, the eyes can be a big source of sense gratification. You see this, see that, see everything. You know. But if we are enlivened by seeing the beauty of the deity, and we had this incredible festival, I don't know if you were here a couple of Sundays ago.
Yeah.
Did you see with all the petals?
Oh, I was loving it.
Yeah, we all loved it. It was great. And you know, there was Radha Giridhari, you know. I mean, I've been coming to this temple practically every day. Well, I travel a little bit, figure about 300 days a year, and seeing these beautiful deities. And it's always enlivening. It's always enlivening to see, you know, that for me they're not just statues. You know, they're actually Radha and Krishna there. I mean, I'm not a realized soul, but I'm enlivened by their beauty and their smile, and, you know, I chant prayers to them. So there to see them, you know, getting all these petals. I mean, the devotees on the altar were going nuts. They were the petals, and you saw, they were up to here, the petals.
I mean, that was a special memory, you know. So when that's going on, nobody who's getting into it is thinking, all right, like, how long is this going to last? I got to go see a movie. No one's thinking about that. Everyone is immersed, you know. This is a Krishna, it's a festival. Every day is a festival. I was just spoken about that. In the spiritual world, it's all a festival. You know, every day is a special festival. Radharani's cooking hundreds of preps for Krishna, and Krishna's going out to the forest, and he's singing, playing with his boys, you know, and the whole thing is adventurous. It's all centered on Krishna. But he's so great, he can relate to everybody in a very personal way. Because we all want a very personal relationship. But because he's God, it's not like one or the other, it's both, and many more, that he can relate to, just in the way that they want to be related to. With his boys, he plays exuberantly, all these games, and they wrestle together. Sometimes he loses, sometimes he wins, you know, and it's all very friendly. And with his, you know, girlfriends, with the gopis, there's all this affair going on, you know, but it's all very wholesome. And with his parents, you know, he's the son, they're taking care of him, and there's that rasa going on. So that's where we want to be. But it's easy to become attracted if you focus your mind on it and if you chant the holy name. Because Krishna is absolute, this is what it means, he can expand and he can invest in anything that's related to him directly with his potencies. And therefore this name, Krishna, and the mantra Hare Krishna, you're actually associated with Krishna. You're getting purified just through the sound. The sound is especially the merciful incarnation of Krishna in this age. He's here right now in the sound. We just have to appreciate it. But we're so conditioned, we've been here so long, there's a lot of coverings of crud, the lust and crusted heart. You know? Now what's that poem?
Lust and crusted
heart. All glory to the chanting of Shri Krishna's holy names, which easily extinguishes samsara's blazing flames by polishing the lust-encrusted mirror of the heart. So this samsara is our imprisonment in birth and death. You see? And the reason why that imprisonment is there is because of our attachment to this world. And that takes the form of material attachment, which is known as kama. Kama is known as sex desire, but it's more than that. It's every material desire we have. So there are so many of these desires in our heart, and it's kind of encrusting it. And we can't see ourselves, we can't see Krishna, we're completely blinded by it. So that has to be cleansed away, and that's what chanting does. Chanting of the holy name. That's the first installment, cleansing. So let's go on here. Vaya Gunda Nivashya, is that the one we read? Yeah. That the soul, the Ishvara, we're Lord of this body, we leave the body, and our consciousness is just like, we take with it our thoughts and our desires and our aspirations and our fears. And according to that consciousness, which is very complicated, you know, I mean, just think of your own mind. We only access a small amount of really what's in there. Sometimes, you know, something will remind you of something happened 40 years ago. Well, I haven't thought of that in so long. You know, sometimes it's a fragrance. Have you ever been in a forest? Oh, yeah, I remember we used to come. You remember? It's known that fragrances will kick off memories. But all of that's in there, in your subconscious, you know. And that's the fragrances you collected, and that will be the template of your next body. Now, the good news is that if you practice just a little Krishna consciousness, just the amount that you've already done, whatever it is, just being here and chanting Hare Krishna a little bit, that will protect you from losing the human form of life. Krishna says, Neha bitkamanashosti pratyabhayam navidyate. He says, in this endeavor of Krishna consciousness, there's never any loss or diminution, and even a little advancement, svopam, not even, it doesn't mean little, it means very little. Suopam means very little. Svopam apasadhamasa trayate mahato vayat will protect you from the most fearful danger, which is losing this precious human form of life. So, that's good news. But we shouldn't prolong the agony by going, 1% this life, 1% the next life. Let's see if we can go 100%. Or as far as we can go. Just make it 1 or 2 lives and out. And then we'll all meet in the spiritual world, and we won't need Bhagavad Gita class anymore. We'll just chant it. So this is very, to me this was, so illuminating, this particular verse, how we're cultivating this consciousness, and the soul takes that consciousness with it. The mind doesn't die. We have 2 bodies really. The gross and the subtle body. The gross body is what we commonly call the body, what we see in the mirror, what we can see. But we have that subtle body, which is really where we live, the mind, the intelligence, and the ego, the sense of self. And that doesn't die. When the gross body dies, this is the machine. When it finally gives out, for one reason or another, the subtle body continues. And that's what forms the template of your next gross body. So the more wholesome we can make it, the more Krishna conscious we can be, the better our future will be. In fact, we can even go back to God and not take a gross body at all. Simply have pure spiritual body. So that's text number 8. And 9
I have a
we
question.
can read also. Yeah.
So what about DNA? Is that subtle or gross?
It's gross.
That's gross.
It's a record. It's like a record of your karma.
Yeah.
You know? Just like the stars. Now you're into the stars.
Yes.
But the stars, you know, we say, oh, my Mercury is occluded now, or whatever it is.
Retrograde.
But that's a record of your karma.
Yeah.
You know, like that. You understand. But Krishna can change all that. You know, Prabhupada said, one time I'm reading this Lilamrita, it's a great, wonderful, you know, Prabhupada's in India now. They go to this city called Surat. It's just like going to the spiritual world. Everybody in the city comes out. Prabhupada has 20 devotees with him. Prabhupada didn't even go out they would go out on Harinam every day, you know, dancing and chanting. And all the people would come out from the stores and from the houses. They would garland the devotees. They had bunting across the way, you know. The devotees were in bliss. They would get so many garlands they'd have to give them away, you know. So, forgot what I got into that. This is what happens when you get older. My brain. Anyway. Oh yes. So somebody wanted to stay it wasn't in Surat, it was another city. Somebody offered to read the devotee's hands, do palm reading, you know. So Prabhupada said, I do read Prabhupada's palm. I said, forget about that. He said, you just clap 2 or 3 times in front of the deity and all the lines change. Krishna can change your karma. He's the only one who can change your life. All right, are we ready to read another verse? Okay. This one is also really significant, illuminating. Shotram chakshus sparshanam cha rasanam granam cha adhishtaya manaschaya Vishayanupasevate. The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. Purport. In other words, if the living entity adulterates his consciousness with the qualities of cats and dogs, in his next life he gets a cat or dog body and enjoys. Consciousness is originally pure like water. But if we mix water with a certain color, it changes. Similarly, consciousness is pure, for the spirit soul is pure, but consciousness is changed according to the association of the material qualities. Real consciousness is Krishna consciousness. When therefore one is situated in Krishna consciousness, he is in his pure life. But if his consciousness is adulterated by some type of material mentality, in the next life he gets a corresponding body. He does not necessarily get a human body again. He can get the body of a cat, dog, hog, demigod, or one of the many other forms, for there are 8,400,000 species. So one thing I discovered about this verse, you know, for years, many, many years, more than I can remember, I've been fascinated by the process of addiction. Because for me, the addiction is just an extreme example of what we all experience just in ordinary life. Addiction is when something gets so much hold of your mind, some substance, or it can be, they're describing the video games now. I mean, they're way more realistic than in my day. You know, I remember I have to confess, I played Pac-Man when it came out. At the supermarket one time, just to see what all the fuss was about. You remember Pac-Man? You remember that? I mean, who would play Pac-Man today, you know? But that was absorbing enough. Now to have your own avatar, which, you know, oh my God, who can imagine? So, this word upasevate, the last word in the verse, so the word is vishayan. Now vishayan means the object of the senses, and upasevate means to enjoy, Prabhupada says. But if you look it up in the dictionary, which I did one time, in the Sanskrit dictionary, Sanskrit English, upasevate can also mean addiction, addicted. One becomes addicted to a certain set of sense objects. Now Prabhupada would often use the example of the hog. The hog eats anything, actually, but he prefers feces. And so, you know, we can't even imagine that. But what's really sobering is to realize that as living entities, we can and maybe have had the body of a hog in previous life and would turn our big snouts up at halva and prefer feces. So that's like a frightening thought, but that's really what it's all about. The hog is, and you know, different animals, they like different foods, and so that's upasevate. That's a certain set of ears and eyes and sense of touch and tongue and so forth. And one gets accustomed to a certain set of sense objects, and that's what you enjoy. So it's all a question of conditioning. Now in the human form, we can decide to direct our senses in one way, in certain ways. But as we grow up, as we live in this world, and not only that, but even we're born into it, we have certain genes, and you know, that's all part of it, part of our karma. We get accustomed to a certain kind of food, for instance. I mean, I wasn't a devotee from birth. It's been 25 years, or well, maybe 20 years, as just an ordinary person in the United States. I remember, you know, when McDonald's came out in 1961 or something, they first came on the scene. We would go bowling, me and my friends, at this place every Saturday night, and suddenly there's a McDonald's there. Oh, great. After bowling, we'll go to the McDonald's. And I found out what a cheeseburger was. And for years, yeah, let's get a cheeseburger. You know, I didn't think anything was bad about it, you know. And someone suggested, you know, vegetarians, I don't even think I heard about a vegetarian. You know, it was a weird, you know, thing. Vegetarian, what about Big Macs, you know? So I got accustomed to that, right? And only much later, because of my involvement in yoga and finally bhakti yoga at Krishna consciousness, you know, I give that up. It didn't seem like a very difficult thing to do. I was a smoker of cigarettes at one time, but that desire to smoke seemed to reduce a lot when I became a vegetarian. And I don't remember any, you know, difficulty, although that could be really difficult to give up in certain people. So it's simply a question of conditioning, of your getting involved with a certain thing, habituating yourself to enjoying something, and then becoming really attached to it. Now in the human form, you know, oftentimes our mentality, our intelligence will give us arguments why it's okay. I was reading today, you know, someone was talking about, how prominent it's becoming vegan tourism. They want to go to different countries, but they just want to eat vegan, you know. So they'll be in India, that's fairly easy, but even in Thailand and other places, just vegan, you know. Okay, it's still sense gratification. But at least it's a step up, you know. But the point is that we've been going through this for lifetimes, you know, and in lower forms, what do we know? You know, a certain set of sense objects and foods, and that's it. But in human form of life, that's just one conditioning. You know, we have the music, and we have the associations, we have ideas, we have crazy ideas that we get into due to association. You know, it's very, very complicated. So Krishna consciousness gives us the understanding. First of all, the intelligence, the understanding of what's going on, and gives us a process to determine our real auspicious future, you know, heading toward getting out of this imprisonment of matter altogether and back into the spiritual environment. You know, it's completely unheard of. You know, people are trying to adjust this world, you know, this and that, politics and this and that, spend money here, you know, in order to adjust it materially. Now we're aware of that, but we're also aware of the cause. And it's, you know, the modes of nature, and it's never going to come to the point of peace and prosperity and happiness this way. And being in the Kali Yuga, big disasters can come, anytime, and they have come in this. So the only solution is a radical change. When I was a kid, I thought I was a radical, and it was all based on communist ideology. Radical. It wasn't radical enough. It was foolishness. But this is really the radical philosophy and movement, to get to the very root of the real problem, which is your consciousness, which is changing demons into devotees, into saints. That's actually what will change the society and change our own lives as well. Okay, it's almost time for Nectar of Devotion. Dravida Prabhu. You have a question or a comment?
Two comments.
Go ahead.
One thing is that I remember watching a documentary on Tibetan Buddhism before coming to the temple, and I was searching, and
you were young, 13, you say?
No, when I was searching that.
What was that, last year? No, I'm just kidding. he could be 14. Anyway.
I remember the Dalai Lama said this. He said when he meditates, he can actually see his previous lives as different animals.
Really?
He said it's like you have to break the cycle. Samsara is preaching like that. But I thought that was just strange, but also.
It's not. You probably haven't read the whole fourth canto yet, have you?
Not entirely.
There's a very interesting. I remember this very distinctly because I was proofreading it. I've been producing. This was one of the books I proofread, the whole fourth canto, and it's the story of King Prachanabardhi and his sons, the Prachetas, Narada Muni's, using this king. It's like an allegory. It's an extended allegory. That word is used. It's rare, but it's. And after Narada Muni describes this whole thing, King Prachanabardhi is asking about transmigration of the soul, and I forget the details, but there's several verses there describing how the great devotees, and the purport is described too. It's a question of like completely calm mind also. That's part of being Krishna conscious, being very, very peaceful, even if there's disturbance around you. That they can access these previous thoughts and previous lives. So that's there also in our philosophy, that you can see it and reject it. In other words, there's all kinds of desires and things that we're protected from because we couldn't handle it. Who's going to be? I mean, is anyone here ready to remember the last 5 deaths they went through? What horrors that was all about? No, thank you. I'm glad. Thank you, Krishna, for making me forget. But if you're completely convinced you're a spirit soul, and then all of this was just external to you, you can actually handle that. Anyway, I'll point out the passage to you, but it's in philosophy also, in the Bhagavad. Yes, Prabhu.
So we were talking about how a living entity moves from body to body based on his mindset. Yesterday, Mukunda and I were reading, and one of the verses was talking about envy. And so I was curious, what is the karma for one who is envious? Like what Mukunda had said, he said, well, envy...
Where were you reading?
Chapter 18.
Of the book? Of the Bhagavad Gita, okay.
Yeah. Mukunda had said, envy manifests in different ways. So if you're envious in thought, because in Kali Yuga, you don't get karmic reactions for yourself.
Just by thinking.
Yeah. He was like, well, if you're envious in thought only, then you don't really get a karmic reaction. Is that true, or like how? Well,
yeah. I mean, you think of how it would develop over time, or you lead a lifetime, and you're envious. Now, there's 2 aspects to envy. Envy means someone has something that you want. That's the common meaning. You're jealous, And the other is enmity, malice, which you may not want, something that someone has, but you think they're your arch enemy because they took something away from you, what you had, or they, whatever. You know what I mean? There's actually a division there. So, over the course of a lifetime, can you really hold that mood of envy towards someone without acting on it? You know? Now it's possible, but the idea is that as you go on, the things that are most prominent in your psychological makeup will also manifest in your activities, in your actions. Now, you know, I remember, you know, times before I was a devotee where I hated somebody, I was envious. You know, it wasn't like any murderous thing or anything, but it was just like the normal course of high school or something, you know. But it passed like a cloud. You know, after a few days, because I didn't do anything about it, I didn't cultivate it, I didn't meditate on it, you know. It just kind of went away. Just like all these, you know, the attachments. I'll love you forever. Oh yeah, we're soulmates. Right. You know, that was when I was a freshman. Then when I was a sophomore, you know, it just comes and goes. So the point is, over a course of a lifetime, the things that you really are deep in your consciousness, you will act on, and they will become, you know, embedded in your psychological makeup. And those are the things that are going to be, if you don't chant Hare Krishna, are going to be prominent at the time of death. This is how I understand it. You know, because in Kali Yuga, everyone is so distracted. There's a million different things that are going on. You know, you're playing a video game, and you're killing somebody, right? But then that's over. Then you're somewhere else. You know. So it's like everybody got ADHD. So who knows what they're going to become? The only hope is Krishna consciousness. Okay, now it's definitely time for the NOD, the nectar of devotion.
I thought we were on Krishna.
I think it's Krishna.
No, you're right. Okay. For the Krishna book, NOD is next week. And don't forget, text 10, when we resume on Monday. Okay. Too many buttons to push. All right. Krishna book. Okay, this is definitely not where we are. Bookmarks. All right. Krishna's daily activities. Still. Yes. I forget who's speaking here, but they're speaking about Krishna. The transcendental water, which washes your lotus feet, is known in the higher planetary system as Mandakini, in the lower planetary system as Bhagavati, and in the earthly planetary system as Ganges. This sacred transcendental water flows throughout the entire universe, purifying wherever it flows. Close quote, just before the great sage Narada arrived in the Sudharma assembly house of Dwarka, Krishna and his ministers and secretaries had been considering how to attack the kingdom of Jarasan. So you remember they have to. Yudhishthira wants to perform this sacrifice called the Rajasuya sacrifice. Rajasuya means Raja means king. So it's one in which the king reaffirms his kingship or his emperorship by getting tribute from all the subordinate kings of different provinces. If they don't pay the tribute, then there's a battle. And so he sent out his brothers, his four main brothers there, and Bhimsen, Arjun, Sahadeva, and Nakul. But Jarasan is too strong, and he's not going to give the tribute, so they have to kill him first. He's a big deal. He's already attacked Krishna's city 18 times. So how to attack Jarasan? Because they were seriously considering this subject, Narada's proposal that Krishna go to Hastinapur for Maharaj Yudhishthira's great Rajasuya sacrifice did not much appeal to them. Krishna could understand the intentions of his associates because he is the ruler of even Brahma. Therefore, to pacify them, he smilingly said to Uddhava, "My dear Uddhava, you are always my well-wishing confidential friend. I therefore wish to see everything through you." I thought we read this already. And Uddhava gave this, yes, we finished this chapter, and Uddhava advised that they go as Brahmins and attack them. So then there's Krishna in Indraprastha. Okay, I'm just going to go forward here. Do you remember this part? Uddhava was giving his advice, I don't know if you remember. If you don't remember it, then maybe I read it to somebody else. Okay, in the presence of the great sage Narada, all the other associates of Krishna, Uddhava considered the situation and then spoke as follows. My dear Lord, first of all, let me say that Narada Muni has requested you to go to Hastinapur to satisfy Yudhishthira, your cousin, who's making arrangements to perform the great Rajasuya sacrifice. I think, therefore, that your lordship should immediately go there to help the king in this great venture. But although to accept the invitation offered by the sage Narada is primary and is quite appropriate, at the same time, it is your duty to give protection to the surrendered souls. Both purposes can be served if we understand the whole situation. Unless we are victorious over all the kings, no one can perform this sacrifice, Rajasuya sacrifice. In other words, it's understood that Yudhishthira can't perform this great sacrifice without being victorious over the belligerent king Jarasandha. The Rajasuya can be performed only by one who has gained victory over all directions. Therefore, to execute both purposes, we first have to kill Jarasandha. I think that if we can somehow or other gain victory over Jarasandha, all our purposes will automatically be served. The imprisoned kings will be released, and with great pleasure we shall enjoy the spread of your transcendental fame for having saved the innocent kings whom Jarasandha has imprisoned. But Jarasandha is not an ordinary man. He's proved a stumbling block even to great warriors because his bodily strength is equal to the strength of 10,000 elephants. If there's anyone who can conquer this king, he's none other than Bhimasena, because he also possesses the strength of 10,000 elephants. The best thing would be for Bhimasena to fight alone with him. Then there would be no unnecessary killing of many soldiers. In fact, Jarasandha will be very difficult to conquer when he stands with his Akshaumini divisions of soldiers. We may therefore adopt a policy more favorable to the situation. We know that Jarasandha is very much devoted to the Brahmins and very charitably disposed to them. He never refuses any request from a Brahmin. I think, therefore, that Bhimasena should approach Jarasandha in the dress of a Brahmin, beg charity from him, and then personally engage in fighting with him. And to assure Bhimasena's victory, I think your lordship should accompany him. If the fighting takes place in your presence, I am sure Bhimasena will emerge victorious, for your presence makes everything impossible possible. Indeed, Brahma creates this universe, and Shiva destroys it simply through your influence. Actually, you create and destroy the entire cosmic manifestation. Brahma and Shiva are only superficially visible causes. Creation and destruction are actually performed by the invisible time factor, which is your impersonal representation. Everything is under the control of this time factor. If your invisible time factor can perform such wonderful acts through Brahma and Shiva, will not your personal presence help Bhimasena conquer Jarasandha? Makes perfect sense. My dear Lord, when Jarasandha is killed, the queens of all the imprisoned kings will be so joyful at their husbands being released by your mercy that they'll all sing your glories, being as pleased as the gopis were when released from the hands of Shankachuda. All the great sages, the king of the elephants Gajendra, the goddess of fortune Sita, and even your father and mother were all delivered by your causeless mercy. We also have been thus delivered, and we always sing the transcendental glories of your activities. Therefore, I think that if the killing of Jarasandha is undertaken first, that will automatically solve many other problems. As for the Rajasuya sacrifice, it will be held either because of the pious activities of the imprisoned kings or the impious activities of Jarasandha. My lord, it appears that you are to go personally to Hastinapur to conquer the demoniac kings like Jarasandha and Shishupal, to release the impious imprisoned kings, and also to perform the great Rajasuya. Considering all this, I think your lordship should immediately go to Hastinapur. This advice of Uddhava's was appreciated by all who were present in the assembly. Everyone considered that Lord Krishna going to Hastinapur would be beneficial from all points of view. The great sage Narada and elder personalities of the Yadav dynasty and the Supreme Lord Krishna himself all supported the statements of Uddhava. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead here. Give me a second. Whoops, that's not what I want to do. I'm not pressing the right buttons. Okay, there's something about... Okay, we are a little way up there.
Wrong button.
Jarasandha, delivered. Let's read about him. Now we have a few minutes. 1 minute. In the great assembly of respectable citizens, friends, relatives, Brahmins, sages, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, in the presence of all, King Yudhishthira directly addressed Krishna as follows. My dear Krishna, okay, this goes on. We're getting to the part where they actually approach Jarasandha. I think that's where we're supposed to be. There's some long verses here. Oh yeah. I'm going to read this and then we'll stop. Lord Krishna told King Yudhishthira that he, Krishna, is conquered by the love of one who has conquered his senses. One who has not conquered his senses cannot conquer the Lord. This is the secret of devotional service. So with that in mind, let's worship the deity. All glory to Srila Prabhupada, and we're going to begin there tomorrow. I'm going to do some research here. And so when Monday rolls around, next Monday, a week from Monday, because we're going to read Nectar Devotion, we're going to be right on the right spot. Have no fear. Okay. Now, we're going to have a little ceremony. You'll see the deities. And after that, the chant of Krishna. We can take a look at the side.
Yeah, they're right there.
Thank you. Oh, Krishna.
You couldn't get many words on it.
I did go through it kind of fast a little bit.
I'm sure. Oh, you do right.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not sure.
So do we have a bunch of them?
20.
No, I'll have to go get it.
You're like, oh, you got bigger now.
Oh no, I didn't get to hear it. I had the community service. Tomorrow's like my last day of community service thing. Krishna.
You're gonna drop it?
I had to do 15 days, and like I did 4 straight last week, Tuesday to Friday, and then I've done Monday to the 30th, and then we'll do tomorrow too. And then I have school Monday through Friday, so I go to school right afterwards. It's been college. It's like a private school.
You know what to do with this? Hang it up.
It's like a private school. It's like a downtown. So it's has its own here, I'll put this away.
Put it here.
You sure?
Not there.
It's a private school in downtown?
Actually, you got it.
Yeah, I got it.
Maybe it's better if you carry it.
So,
Yes.
Yeah.
forget this.
Yeah, it's a private
things.
school. It's for it's like a program, you know.
CBS.
They focus on a bad subject, you know.
CBS, that,
So it's like a lot of
things, yeah.
Yeah.
Where are they?
Now,
Well, it's not a charter school. They're only doing Monday to Friday.
They're open to the deities.
So if we have a full-time college, I'll take a test and
Monday. You'll be there, but bring some more.
oh, okay.
Don't forget the
Yeah, man.
What's your name again? Ernest. Ernest, nice to meet you, Ernest. Nice to meet you. Dravida. Dravida? Yeah. So, you look a little too old to be a student in college. I'm
Actually, I've always been curious. I've attended a few kirtans on the East Coast.
Oh, my God.
For about 6 years now.
Oh, I see.
So it's a good question, I guess.
So you're familiar with us on the East Coast?
Yeah, a friend of mine, Scott, I went out with a friend of mine a couple summers ago.
Oh, I see.
And he was suffering from addiction really bad. And you know, I had to rid his house of some addicts and stuff like that. I was going to go for a vacation for a couple of weeks. I ended up staying for 5 months.
Where is it?
Delaware.
In Delaware.
Yeah, southern Delaware. They have a kirtan every month there in Milton, Delaware. There were no Buddhist temples anymore, so I ended up attending kirtan.
Cool.
And I met some devotees over there and stuff. And,
I mean, Delaware, the only devotees I know in Delaware is devotee, Pallada Priya. Does that anything about that?
Sounds familiar. Yeah, he might have been there. I think they have a temple in Bear, Delaware, up north towards Wilmington.
It's interesting because his son, I know his son very well. He's part of the movement, he's initiated.
Okay.
And did you see Madhuripur? He was here today. Yeah, I missed him. But he's the son of this Pallada Priya, and he would probably know if that's exactly the place where you're going.
Yeah, I'm sure. It sounds familiar too. So it very well. A lot of the devotees come down from Philadelphia and Wilmington to go to that specific kirtan.
Oh, I see.
But you know, I went about, I guess, 4 or 5 times out there while I was there, and there was always a nugget in the back of my head. You know, I moved back to San Antonio after that, and I was still attending the Mahayana temple over there. And then when I moved back out here, I knew there was an ISKCON here, so I just started.
That's great.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah.
Well, we're going to have a little... Shishi Govardhana ki jai. Krishna Chaitanya. Namaste Chaitanya Nityananda Prabhu Gauravade Prashanto Prashanto Pramana. Shri Radha ki jai. Krishna Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Harimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaho Krishna Padaya Krishna Prestaya Namaste Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON Bhagavad Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Amsuda Paramahamsa, Dravida Prabhu, Ashtotar, Shri Sriman Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnava ki jai. Namaskar Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Thank you, Lord, Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Govinda Nityananda, Shri Dravida Prabhu, Shri Vasadi Gaur, Bhaktivedanta ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopalinath Sham Pranakun, Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan ki jai. Navadvip Maya Gordhan ki jai. Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai. Jagannath Swami ki jai. Ganga ki jai. Yamuna ki jai. Tulsi Devi ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Transcendental Distribution ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste
I can play it. Sorry.
So Ernest? Is it Ernest?
Yes.
Would you like a little prasad?
Sure. We have the last offering here.
Well, some of the last offering. Like you got hit pretty good. Who made it?
Ramate usually makes that stuff. So
Okay,
that could be.
Wednesday.
That could be.
Krishna.
Krishna.
You catching the bus back?
Yeah.
Me too. That was cool seeing Shelter. I didn't even know they were going to be here.
Today?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I've been listening to Raghunath's music for 20 years, you know, the youth of today, and Better Than 1,000 other bands. You know,
I thought you were like probably one of their cliques or something.
I know a lot of people in the hardcore scene.
Oh, yeah.
I know like Isaac, Danny Diablo. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So was Raghunath in the lounge today?
He was in there. I didn't even know they were going to be here. That was weird. It was. Yeah.
Did you get to hear him talk?
Huh?
You got to hear him talk?
I didn't get to hear him talk, but yeah, I know. I saw him. I saw him and Porcelo and all those guys in there. It was I've been listening to his music for 20 plus years, which is, you know, since Youth of Today, Better Than 1,000 and all those bands. Since the 80s, 90s. Yeah.
I wonderful talk.
Did he? Yeah.
Well, who would like him to shine first? Oh yeah? Yeah. But, we got some milk too?
Oh, awesome. Yeah, that also has kind of an influence on planting a seed also, some of the music that I listen to. There's some Krishna influence, the Cro-Mags and certain bands.
Heard of them, yeah.
Yeah. Never heard the Cro-Mags? John Joseph is a hardcore, he's a hardcore Krishna. Harley Flanagan.
Well, that's what he mentioned. He mentioned Harley.
Oh, did he? Yeah.
And his
Elijah Core.
Yeah.
How do you spell the last name? Harley.
We do like one of the next one.
Yeah, Flanaggan.
So it is.
He's the bassist for the old bassist for the Cro-Mags. There was a disturbance there. Oh yeah, there was a big fight. Like, stabbed some people at Webster Hall in New York.
I heard he had a pretty interesting upbringing.
Oh, Harley Flanagan?
Yeah.
He grew up like in
Hare Krishna.
Thank you too late.
You missed.
Yeah.
8:15. Sorry about that.
Wait, did you miss it?
Take a little shot.